Great. Let me just make a comment about the quiz at the end. What's the purpose of the quiz? The purpose isn't to give you a grade. The purpose is just to make sure that you know enough to be a high quality OM. We take this ministry so seriously. We want to make sure that just about everybody that's an online missionary can respond and knows what to do. That's the purpose of it. And it does, if you have to get 80% right to pass, and if you should not pass the first time, you can take it again. And it's easy to go back and take it again. When you get an answer wrong, it tells you immediately the answer's wrong. So make a note of that as you go through, and then go back into the course and find the answer. Then take the test again. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, well, we've given you enough guidance now, and maybe just one final thing. You know, all of us have said an awful lot of words here, an awful lot of instructions. We showed you all this complex stuff. You know, the best way to go through the course is just to take it. There isn't really much you have to remember except that one item that Mike pointed out, that when you get to the end and you pass the quiz at the test at the end, don't shut it down before it's done or we won't record your information. So we're going to be standing by here for the next, until about the next hour and a quarter, and we'll be available to ask any questions. So I'd suggest that you go ahead and try to log into the course, start the course, see how it goes. Any questions you have, just feel free to ask those questions, and we'll be here to answer them for you. Use the Q&A button, and we'll answer you live, unless it's some kind of a question that's only specific to you. But most of the questions we'll just answer live by talking. And again, if you can't concentrate very well by taking the course and also listening to us talk at the same time, just turn us off and then turn us back on again when you're ready to answer a question. It is a good idea to stay on, though, while you're taking the course, because we'll be talking about some interesting things that may be exciting for you to hear about. Okay, that's where we are. Do we have any other questions come up now, team?
Blair, we don't, but I would like to point out that at least 2 more people since we started have completed the course. So we started with 1,153 completed. I kind of fudged and made myself complete, and so we've got 1,156 now.
Great, good news. So just type those questions, just let us know. Meanwhile, we'll just chat here about a few things and see where we go from there.
A few people have asked if we have something for the hearing impaired, because there is a significant hearing impaired audience out there, and we did create a version of the course that has all the videos have captions on them, all of the words that we say, so that even if you're deaf, you can get the content. You just need to let the training team know that you need to get that course. We will enroll you in that course and take you out of the main one.
Well, since you're talking, Dan, let me just ask you, now your wife is part of GMO staff, isn't that right?
Yes.
What does she do?
Well, she used to be the applications team leader, and she was involved in training for a while. Now she does finance for GMO and processes a lot of donations, and she does some HR stuff. But I love going to work every day with her, and she's a great person.
And you head up our Chinese online missionaries, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Chinese branch?
Well, about 1/5 of the world's population is Chinese, and so eventually we'd love for about 1/5 of our ministry to be in Chinese, but there's a lot of issues trying to reach out in China. They have this thing called the Great Firewall of China, with actually we've heard there's about 1 million people employed by the government whose job it is to block, censor, and monitor the internet. But we know that God is greater, and He is going to help us figure out how to beat this. In the meantime, we have a moderate number of amount of outreach and contacts coming in. We've got about 40 active Chinese online missionaries right now, and we touched about 5 million Chinese speakers last year. But about 16 million people were born in China last year. So as you can see, we're kind of swimming upstream, as it were. But praise the Lord, we're not the only people that are trying to reach China. But it's an exciting ministry, and we do have some partners inside China who we are working on a pilot project to try to, when seekers are wanting to meet with someone local, a local believer, then we can try to connect them up with someone.
Well, but let me ask you just a couple of things about China. I know in English, the number of contacts that we receive is down now. But what about in China? Do you need more Chinese OMs?
Currently, our flow has been kind of depressed for about the last 5 or 6 months. We have enough online missionaries at the moment, and but we are hoping that floodgate will open, and that we will get a lot more, and we'll be needing to recruit some more Chinese OMs. There's some questions, Blair, here on the screen, and so I think we should look at those.
Please.
Excellent course. I was a little unsure how to answer the last question. If you mean the last question on the quiz, I don't have them all memorized, which they are, but you need 80% to pass the final test, so if there's one that you missed, oh, Mike's raising his hand. Mike
hasn't memorized. No, just kidding. The last one is it applies to someone writing to somebody in a sensitive country. Now that is, if you go on your ARC screen, I think there are some buttons at the bottom that talk about what that sensitive country list is. Is that right, Dan? The what is it? Open Doors has the World Watch List, it's called. So worldwatchlist.us is where we take that from. And there are just some rules that we'd like you to follow when answering questions from people there. And they're kind of common sense. So I'm not going to answer the question, but you probably would be able to find that pretty easily in either the Online Missionary Manual or in the course.
Let me just make a comment about the sensitive countries. You know, our policy is pretty straightforward about how to respond. And really, the key in our policy is simply not to use Christian terms in the subject line. And the thought is that if somebody is in a Muslim family, maybe a wife in a Muslim family, she's sitting there wearing her burqa and she's surfing the net and she's responding, and her husband looks in and sees the emails, and he sees something in the email, the subject line that says, "I'm glad you've become a Christian." That could be very dangerous to her. So we want to avoid those kinds of things. And so the only thing we really enforce is that we don't use Christian terms in the subject line. But what is a Christian term? Well, Jesus is a Christian term. Christian is a Christian term. Salvation is probably a Christian term. Use your judgment on other words that you think might be just sort of marginal. I can tell you what I do. I've responded to almost 7,000 online missionaries in many in countries that are sensitive. When I get a message from somebody, even in a sensitive country like Nigeria, where it's sensitive, but it's sort of not that really sensitive. There's a lot of oppression there, but there's not a lot of people that are reading other people's emails necessarily from like the government. So when I get a message like that, I simply write back and I simply say something like this: "John, thanks for visiting our website." A simple, non-Christian response. And then in my message, I pull out all the stops, and if he's accepted Christ as Savior, I help him grow his Christian faith. If he's not a Christian, I help him understand why he should be, and so on. Maybe that'll help you in terms of the sensitive countries.
Ramona Carpenter said, after you take the course and pass it, can you go back and see the right answers for any questions you missed? But Mike, what would our users do if they wanted to find out about something they missed?
Yeah, actually, Dan, you can take the final as many times as you want to. You may fail it the first time, and you can just go through it again until you get them all right. There's nothing tracks the number of times you do this or your earlier scores. Nothing's averaged out or anything. So it actually, as you go through the final, you miss a question and you get a little buzz, and it will show you what you got wrong. It'll tell you, no, that's actually not right. It should be this, this, and this. And many times what people miss is that, you select a correct answer, but there are actually 3 correct answers that you should have clicked on. So it's not that what you wrote is wrong, it's just not everything that is right. So I hope that makes sense.
Good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, I've taken that quiz so many times, can't even count it. I've almost memorized the answers. As we went through trying to prepare the quiz and make sure everything worked right, many of us were in that situation. And every time you get an answer right, you get a nice ding, or most of the time it's a ding. If you get it wrong, you get a dong sound or a batter sound, but you'll be able to see what was wrong. So getting to pass the quiz is pretty easy. You go through the first time, or if you make a mistake, just jot down what the correct answer is. When you go through it the second time, I'm sure you'll get it right.
Yes, and we have this question from Bluebird about, I'm trying this out and to see if I actually send something, but I would like to know, since I logged in just 10 minutes ago, what test are you talking about? Is it the one that I took for GMO the other day, the one with the guy singing to the tune of an old Beatles song, and then an old Simon and Garfunkel tune, while he kidded us for just missing one question? Just wondering. Now, I don't know if Bluebird is teasing a little bit on that, but yes, that's our very own Dan Lee, and he's not getting on to you for missing just one question. He's just kind of hoping that you enjoy his little silly songs with Dan. Now, if you're serious about this, actually, I have had a very few people who have taken the course and were actually unaware that there were 2 elements to the course, as I demonstrated earlier. So you go through it and you work through the training material, and you don't notice that there is that locked icon for the other item. And you do have some questions in the training material, but those are those pre-tests or those knowledge checks to see if you already have mastery of the material that we're about to show you video for. And once you get through all of those, then you're not quite done with the course yet. You actually have to take that final test.
Okay, good. Until we have another question, just let me ask another question for one of you. Now, Marion, I think you were a missionary.
Yep. We were with our mission for about 23 years. Most of those years we were in Quito, Ecuador. And when we retired in 2012 from the mission, I was wondering, oh no, what do I get to do now? And because I had been working in IT for our mission, I had come across GMO earlier and then went back looking for y'all, found GMO and joined up as an online missionary. Enjoyed it a lot, and really, Eileen, your personal notes to me made a big difference in just my enjoyment of answering contacts and feeling appreciated as an online missionary. And so I told my pastor about it, about GMO, and he was really excited about it. So we started a community at our church, and been going great guns since then.
Good, thank you. And weren't you back in Ecuador just this last month?
Yes, a couple weeks ago. We were there for a week. My husband's a doctor, and he trained a lot of family practice residents there, 180 family practice residents, and we were back for Dick to be part of a conference, a medical conference there in Spanish. It was a lot of fun, seeing friends and seeing places that were favorite places for us.
Great, thank you. Any more questions come up?
Yeah, but there's a few, so I think Mike is going to address some of these.
Well, I wanted to specifically answer a question from Michael. He says, if the topic is so sensitive, just how secure is the basic text of the message? I think he's referring to Graham's question about the contacts from sensitive countries. And that's a good point. We actually have on staff a guy from Morocco, a converted former Muslim. And, you know, we've talked this issue back and forth with him quite a bit. He would actually even be okay with us having a little more in the subject line than we recommend. But at the very most, you know, you would not want to have Jesus in the subject line probably. And in the body, you know, gosh, if we leave out any of the biblical terms in there, then we really aren't doing them much good. So they've questioned us about how they can walk with Christ, and it's our responsibility to help them take that next step, whether they whether they understand what they've really done when they click that yes button or not. What we would like to do is try to verify that indicated spiritual decision, and make sure that by the time they have read our message, they at least know how they can be born again. So we do need to use those spiritual terms. And yes, it is a secure system. That's one of the key things about the ARC system. From the visitor's perspective, they can't have any idea who we are. So there's actually, from their side, there's only one email address that comes out to them. It's like connect@godlife.com. If any of you have ever actually entered on one of the forums yourself, that's the only message that comes out to them from all of our online missionaries. So from their perspective, it's all the one email address. And then from our perspective, we don't see their email address either. So it's two-way security in that way.
You know, it's this whole issue of sensitivity. It's just so important, and yet it's so hard as online missionaries to have this fine line. So let's suppose you get somebody from Cincinnati that responds, and the person says, I am a Muslim and I've just accepted Christ as my Savior. What do I do next to grow my Christian faith? Wow, wouldn't that be a great message to get back? I can just see everybody excited about, okay, this is what the next steps, this is what you need to do. But that's not a Muslim country. Cincinnati isn't Muslim, I don't think yet. But at any rate, what would you do? The best thing to do if you respond to that person in the subject line is to not disclose any Christian terms. Even though it's not a Muslim, it's not a Muslim country. And as you write, it's this tough battle that we face. When we write to somebody, particularly someone who is of another faith like Islam or Hindu, and they make a decision for Christ, our communication with them may be the only time that they have a chance to have any information from a Christian. Boy, when I realize that, it just convicts me that I better really pay attention. I better really be careful that what I write to them will help them start off their life right as a Christian. So since I'm one of the old guys here, I write a lot, and I probably write too much, but I want to make sure that I don't miss anything key that I give to them. But I do worry if it's somebody that's in a Muslim country or clearly was a Muslim or a Hindu, or if they have, say, something that's antagonistic in their message. I am concerned about security, and I'm glad we have these good security measures in place now.
Yeah, Blair, just one final word on that issue. Really, the bottom line is these people have approached us, and they're the ones who know the amount of risk that they are willing to take. And so writing back to them on this channel that they've opened is really acceptable for us. Does that make sense?
It does, but it still worries me because of our responsibility here. We rarely hear. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard of a situation where a contact got in trouble. Probably we'd never find out if a contact got in trouble. But it's something that just concerns me personally. I want to be myself very careful about it.
We have heard of a couple of cases, but you're right. In many cases, the thing would end and we wouldn't know. There's a question here from. Actually, it's Bluebird who asked previously about if he or she, I'm not sure, sorry, Bluebird, what gender of bird that is, but I took the course and did the pretest and then did the final test. Is there another test, or did I just do all of it? I think you have done all of it, and how you'll know is when you go back to that opening screen that shows all the icons, as Mike pointed out, and you may have missed this because you said you came in late, there will be a completed, here, let me just show you one more time here. Let me go to my training screen. I'm not sharing my screen yet. I'm getting the screen that I want to share with you, and then I'll share it with you.
Dan, while you're doing that, the conversation just reminded me of what Carol McElmurray shared with us all this afternoon. She said, I got an email from one of the OMs in the other language community, and here's what it said. One email had a rather long comment in Arabic, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be the same old stuff, but after I Googled it, I was wrong. Here's what the contact wrote. I revived a new life filled with love and happy to enter the Lord and my love of Jesus Christ after making the darkness of Islam and the thanks and the glory to the Lord alone is the light of my life and that of my heart. I love you, I love you, I love you, my Lord Jesus. I love you with all my heart. Now that's amazing. No, I never want anybody to answer a question like that. If you may have paid attention, it came in Arabic, and this person, before transferring it to the other languages community, they checked to see what language that was using Google Translate, which usually is a good practice to do. But they read the results that they got, and they could understand enough to know that this Arabic-speaking person had received Christ, and not only was saying, I want to be a Christian, but specifically saying, I love you, Jesus. I want to make you Lord of my life. That's really encouraging to me.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. So thanks for sharing that, Mike. Many of the results of this ministry we will never know until eternity, but God does bless us and encourage us every so often with some report like that. By the way, I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you what, oops, I showed the wrong one. I'm just going to share the whole desktop. Okay, hopefully you're looking at a screen of GMO training that shows a bunch of courses on it. And Bluebird, you'll see the icon down at the bottom should be green with a check mark and say completed. So that's what a course looks like when you've completed it, okay? So hope that helps. And I'm glad you actually did enjoy the singing and that you did not feel too taunted and mocked.
But now that wasn't the course she's taking, right? Your screen has got a lot of different courses on it. The one that she has will simply have the one that's in yellow over there on the left.
Yeah, here's what yours looks like. Yellow OM refresher training, and I completed that one too. This is my administrative screen. So I've got Russian courses and Chinese courses. Hopefully you will not see this if you are an English user. Now, Mary, you had a kind of a long question which really does not deal with training. It deals with the ARC system. And so I would like to just really quickly, Mary would like to see bigger letters in our ARC system because she can't see that well. And we do have quite a number of elderly people who are OMs, and we're sensitive to that. There are some tools outside of ARC that actually can help you with that. And if you would write to us at the help desk, Mary, I think we can probably give you some individualized help with that. So I hope you'll do that, and we can definitely help you with that. But it's not actually a training issue. Now, Graham?
Well, could I just add to that, because I'm elderly also, you know, and there are some simple things that you can do. I happen to have a giant monitor, in fact, 2 of them here, so I can blow things up pretty big. But when you're looking at ARC, there's a way that you can zoom and make everything bigger just without doing anything. Generally, if you have a mouse like I do here, with a wheel on, I don't know if you can see it, there's a wheel in the center of this mouse. And if I hold down the control button and move that wheel up and down, it will make the whole screen bigger or smaller. Now, your computer system might be a little bit different, might not quite work that way. But you might noodle around a little bit and see what tools there are available that allows you to make things bigger. Eileen, were you going to say something?
No, but we have 2 more questions that Mike or Dan, would y'all like to answer for him?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer Graham and Michael, who I see now as Mick Andrews. That's great. So Graham once again says he's talking about the sensitive countries where we try to not use some of the spiritual terms that we would use in the body of the message. He says the subject line that I use, and this is a good suggestion, from, and possibly from Graham in the United States, or in, I think Graham actually is in Australia, on a date. So yes, that's a neutral subject line. Some other people would put like from godlife.com because that's the website that they visited from, or some other people would maybe put their actual name that they have indicated in the subject line because that might get their attention. There's all kinds of suggestions on that, but yeah, that would be a good thing to have in there. And then Michael says, thanks, Mike, for your answered question on security. Missed those studies you shared with us last year. Yes, we used to have online Bible studies over chat. Me and Mick did. So that's great. Thanks, Mick. Good to talk to you. And Graham asks again, I'm aware of the need to respect sensitive countries. I found myself rereading the last question several times, trying to marry the possible answers to the question. Each time I attempted to answer the question, the response came back incorrect. If you could walk me through the question and answers, that would be great. Now, Graham, I hope you understand we're trying not to actually answer any of the questions on this webcast. Question number 15 is the last question, and it says, what statements apply when writing to someone in a sensitive country? And it says, select all correct answers, then click submit. And I don't think I'm giving away too much when I say, whenever you see select all correct answers, there might be more than one correct answer there. So number 1 is avoid writing God or Jesus in the subject line. Number 2 is give the name and address of local Christians. Number 3 is answer prayerfully and with cultural sensitivity. Number 4 is invite them to be friends on Facebook. So I'm gonna let you decide which of those answers would be correct.
Good. If we're between questions, let me just ask Jamie something. Oh, is there another question?
No, we have several.
Okay, please go ahead. I just can't see them.
Okay, David Hornberger says there's no yellow or blue box when I click into training. Yellow or blue box. I'm thinking maybe, David, you're talking about the opening screen that I showed that has the yellow is the course background, I'm thinking, and then the blue would be maybe the first screen. Now, David, this is a good point, actually. David was one of my TCLs. David was a training community leader. And when we released the online missionary basic training, I asked David to go through that basic training so that he would be able to understand what the online missionaries he was training were going through. So he would be very familiar with the content. And I haven't checked his username, but I would guess that that's the reason that he doesn't see that. Now, if you have had the online missionary basic training within the past year, I exempted you from the online missionary refresher training. It's not exactly the same. You are advantaged to take the refresher training because there are a few new things since we came out with the basic training the end of last year, but it wasn't enough to require you to do the online missionary refresher training. So I hope that answers that question. And I'll keep going. I guess not everybody's able to see the Q&A at all times. Mary says, thanks, Mike. I do have a wheel, and I'll do that. That was that suggestion from Blair. So good suggestion, Blair.
Mike, let me add for David. If you got exempted from the refresher training, but you want to take it anyway, just send us a note, and we'll enroll you in it. By all means, you are much welcome to take the course. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't want to second guess anybody who wants to go through the training. I just didn't want to put you on a list where you would be pestered to continue it if you hadn't started it when you really were exempt from it.
Yeah, I've got one here. Someone says when I think this is continuing the subject about people from sensitive countries, I just put the seeker's name such as hello, Mike. Certainly that's very neutral. But we do want to encourage you to try to do something that will let them know that this is, a response to their inquiry. Mike, you asked about, or Mike, your question about whatever, and you could do that without being super spiritual, and it might be a little more inviting as a subject line. Remember that your message is in their email inbox, possibly with lots and lots of other messages. And many of us, we filter messages and we look at the subject line, and if it looks like just some generic thing from some company, we may never open it.